Well, it is great to have all of you joining in with us today. To those of you, my friends at Madras and Northgate, I'm so glad you're here. And for all of you joining in online, and my friends Jeff and Jamie in Dubai, glad that you're with us today. What we're going to talk about today, I'm so glad you're here if you're visiting with us for the very first time, because you're here at the beginning of a ministry year. And what that means to us is everything sort of starts back new. And what I'm going to talk to you about today is something that, even if you're not yet a follower of Christ, I know that it's applicable to you, and I hope you'll find it to be helpful to you as well. What I want to talk to you about is one of the things that, as a pastor, if I could just push a button and make some things happen, there are things that I'd love to see happen for every person. For instance, if I could push a button and everybody who attends one of our campuses, you could see somebody be baptized that you know, and when they're baptized and you applaud and yell and you're so happy, that you would know that you had played a part in them becoming a follower of Jesus. Because once that happens to you, once you've helped somebody come to know Jesus and you watch them be baptized, it's just the best. If I could push a button, I would see to it that every person would have that experience. Another thing, if I could push a button and for every person that attends one of our campuses, I would push a button and make everybody at all of our campuses exceptionally generous with the stuff that they have. If I could push a button and everyone would just, save first, give first, save second, and then live off the rest and live debt-free. I mean, if I could make it happen where every single person who comes to a community Christian campus just live that way, give first, save second, live off the rest, I don't go in debt, the amount of generosity that would flow from our churches would just be amazing. I mean, if I could see to it by pushing a button that would happen to every single person, we would release such a wave of generosity through our 3 campuses that our area would look up and go, wow, what's causing that? Why are they doing that? I need to find out what's going on over there. If I could push a button and make that happen, I'd make that happen. But I'm not going to talk to you about either one of those today. In fact, what I want to talk to you about today, I think, is a part of maybe even making both of those happen. What I want to talk to you about today, if just my wishing would make it happen, I would see to it that everybody listening to me were in a group of followers of Jesus, that in some kind of structured community, I'd put all of you in groups. I would see to it that all of your middle school and high school students were in group, that all of your elementary students were in group. If just my wishing could do it, I would wish that every person who's sitting in a row listening to this today, or sitting alone at home particularly, I would see to it that you were in some kind of structured community with a group of followers of Christ, so that when the good things and bad things in life came along, you would have a community of followers of Jesus that you could share life with. If I could just make it happen, I would make that happen. Because we truly do believe that circles are better than rows. We believe that sitting face to face is better than everybody facing a stage and listening to us, me or Jason or any other speaker, no matter how good they are. I truly believe that community is essential to people becoming followers of Jesus, and the kind of devoted followers that Jesus requires us to be. Communities where support happens, it's where friendships form, it's where belonging takes place, it's where people help each other understand this is how you follow Jesus, this is how you love each other. And as we begin this ministry year, there is no better time for you to make the decision to get back in group if you haven't been in group for a while, or for you to take the chance and decide, I'm going to give group a shot this year. I'm going to take that step. Now, what I want to talk to you about today is one of the reasons that we see this as being so important, and why I would make it happen if I could make it happen. And it comes from something that Jesus said. It's in a verse that Jesus says to his disciples, those closest followers of his. There are 4 books in the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that talk about the life of Jesus. And Jesus says this to his disciples, and it's not one of those sayings that any of your Christian friends are ever going to tweet out, or they're ever going to post over a picture of a sky background on Facebook. This isn't one of those things that's ever going to be on a calendar you can buy anywhere, or that the guy on Christian radio is going to read out as the happy thought of the day. This is what Jesus says to the people he loves most that he wants them to know. He says, things that cause people to stumble are bound to come. Now, isn't that a happy thought? Things that cause people to stumble are bound to come, but woe to anyone through whom they come. Jesus looks at the people who are close following him, his disciples, and he says, stumbling is just a part of life. Things that cause people to stumble, that's just bound to happen. Now, when you stumble over something, you stumble, everybody for the same reason. You stumble because you didn't see it. There's something that got thrown in your path and you didn't see it and it caused you to stumble. If you'd have seen it, you wouldn't have stumbled. And there are just things that happen in our life that cause us to stumble. Now, the New Testament is written in the Greek language. That was the language of the day, and it's written in that language. And when you write something in the Greek language, what you do is you put the most important word that you want to say, you put it first. It's sort of like a Yoda speak, if you remember Yoda from Star Wars. So literally what Jesus says to his followers is, impossible it is. Impossible it is for stumbling not to come. Impossible it is. That's what he wants to stress. Impossible it is that you won't stumble. It's impossible that you won't stumble. Impossible it is. No matter how much Bible you know, you have the potential to stumble. No matter how long you've been a Christian, the potential for stumbling is there. No matter how much you pay to put your kids in Christian school, the potential of stumbling is there. It is impossible for you to make it through this life without there being things that you don't see, that get in your way, that get tossed into your path, that cause you to stumble. It's just going to happen. Now, this idea of a stumbling block literally means a trap that sort of gets set for you. And the idea that Jesus is talking about is that there are these people, there are these things, there are these relationships that they come along in your life, and before you know it, they cause you to stumble out of your faith. They cause you to stumble out of your following God. There are these things that get put in your past, something happens, and before you know it, you just aren't as involved as you used to be. It just doesn't matter as much to you as you used to. Before you see it coming, faith just isn't as important to you as it was at one time in your life. Now, nothing I just said to you is new information. In fact, all of you know this, right? And the way you know it is, for many of us, that's just our story. In fact, if you grew up in church or you grew up in some form of faith, for many, many of us, there's been a point in our life where we just stumbled out of it. And there are a lot of things that cause us to stumble, and I can't give you an exhaustive list so you can watch out for the exhaustive kind of list to watch out for them, and that's sort of Jesus' point here. Because as smart as you are, and you are smart, and as mature as you are, and I'm sure you're mature, as spiritual as you may be, and some of you are very spiritual, as much Bible as you know, and some of you listening to this know way more Bible than I do. In spite of all of that, Jesus says it's impossible for things not to come along that will cause you to stumble. That at some point in your life, or at several points in your life, that there won't be something that happens that causes you to stumble in your faith. You know, sometimes it's an idea that causes you to stumble. You went off to college and there were people you met or a class that you sat in and somebody told you an idea and you hadn't really had that idea before and they explained that idea and you couldn't see how that idea fit in with your idea of faith and you stumbled. And before you knew it, that idea had sort of become a little thing underneath your feet that caused you to stumble, and before you knew it, faith just didn't matter to me. And you just stumbled right out of your faith. For some of us, it's often not an idea, it's a person. Sometimes it's people that cause us to stumble. We moved from where we grew up, or some key friends of ours moved away, and you get a new group of people, whether you move somewhere and meet some new people, or new people come into your life, and faith just isn't important to this new group as it was to your old group. And so church, that would have been so much a part of your life with the old group, You get up on Sunday and your group's like, church? Sunday? I mean, we don't do church. And what you notice is them not going to church doesn't seem to matter that much to them. It doesn't affect them very much. And before long, because you hang out with them, it doesn't matter that much to you. And you stumble right out of your faith practice. You stumble right out of your relationship. In fact, some of you have friends right now, and the truth is, if you're honest about it, you're here and you're joining in and you're a part of what's going on, but they're not here, and they're a stumbling block to you in your faith. They're a hindrance to you going much further than you are. Maybe you're in love with somebody, and they don't share your faith. Maybe for some of you, you moved in with somebody recently, and there's a little tension over that in your faith, and they've become a stumbling block for you. They got thrown in your feet, and you didn't even see it happening, and before you know it, they cause you to stumble in your faith. And the truth is, you're one of those people that said, that'll never happen to me. That could never happen to me. I'll never stumble out of my relationship with God. It'll never be a problem for me in my relationship with God. I'll always be a church person. But then somebody came along, or somebodies came along, and before you knew it, you had stumbled in your faith. You know something else that can cause us to stumble? And we really don't like to talk about this one in our culture. Money and stuff can cause you to stumble. In fact, Jesus one time is talking about to people who, he's talking about the seed of the Word of God getting planting in a person's heart and what keeps it from growing. And at one point he says, the deceitfulness of riches just choke it out. Now you know what the deceitfulness of riches is, right? I mean, that's not even that hard to understand. It's that riches are deceitful. And what I've found that riches are deceitful about is that riches cause us to think that we're smarter than we actually are. And I mean, you know that's not true, but you watch and see if it doesn't happen to you, that when you have a little bit more money and you manage your money well and you get a little bit more, you begin to think that you're a little bit smarter than you actually are. And if you can't see it, I mean, you know it's not true. If you can't see it in yourself the way you think about yourself, watch how it is when you're around somebody that has a lot more money than you do. Watch and see if you don't suddenly begin to think in your heart, they must be really smart because they're rich. Now, we know that's not true because if you live long enough, you meet some really, really rich people who make really, really stupid decisions. In fact, you don't have to do anything but watch TMZ for a little bit and you can see that. People who are really rich and make really stupid decisions. And you know some really wise people who aren't all that rich. But there's this subtle kind of thing in our culture that riches deceive us into thinking that if people are rich, they must be smarter than they are. But the other thing that happens with riches that deceive us is with wealth comes opportunity and options. And the more options you have, the more tendency that is to be a stumbling block. When you have poverty, poverty just limits your options, and that's a problem sometimes. But wealth, it expands your options, and it becomes a stumbling block. That's why one of the things that I memorized long ago when I first became a Christian was this thing from the book of Proverbs where it says, keep lies and falsehoods far from me. Give me neither poverty nor riches, but only my daily bread. Otherwise, I might have too much and disown you and say, who is the Lord? Otherwise, I might become rich and say, who is God? Wealth can be such a distraction. It's a good thing, but often it causes us to stumble. The flip side of that, of course, is that hard times also can cause you to stumble. Difficult times can be a stumbling block to you because sometimes when you're in a difficult time, that's when you're crying out to God and you think, where's God? Why isn't God doing something? I mean, I pray, does God even hear? I mean, why is it that everything was just going along fine and then all of a sudden everything just fell apart, and I prayed more during that time and I went to church more regularly during that time and I read the Bible more regularly during that time and it still didn't get better? Sometimes difficult times, hard times can be stumbling blocks. Now, what's interesting to me is that Jesus doesn't even try to tell us what the stumbling blocks are. He just says that they are. He just says it's impossible for you to get through life without something getting thrown at your feet that's going to cause you to stumble. And I don't think I have to convince you of that. I don't think I have to spend any time on that, because if you've lived very long at all, you know you've already stumbled. Now, here's what I need to ask you. Do you think it's possible that there's something out there that you don't know about yet, or that there's something you do know about that could get thrown at your feet again that could cause you to stumble again? Is there something out there right now that you can't foresee that could cause you to stumble in your faith, stumble away from your values, stumble away from what you hold to be true? Is there something out there? And the answer is yes. Here's one for you parents. Do you think there's something that could get thrown at the feet of your middle or high school students that could cause them to stumble away from what you've tried to teach them, stumble away from what you hope to be true, stumble out of the faith you tried to give them, stumble them away from church? You go, well, yeah, and it scares me. I mean, I talk to parents and they go, oh, the amount of stuff that gets thrown at our kids these days. Well, here's the thing I want to ask you. You believe that's true for them because that's why you're having those conversations. You go, well, now listen, son. Listen, honey. I need to tell you something. And, of course, when you try to have those conversations with your kids, that's when he goes, Dad, or that's when she goes, only girls can do that, right? They roll their eyes at you. For all of us, for every single person, there's something out there that if it got thrown at your feet at the right time, in the right way, it has the potential to take us out with regard to our faith, to throw us off track, to get us off path. In fact, Jesus promises that these things are going to come. Impossible it is for stumbling not to happen. Now, here's why this is so important when it comes to this idea of why we want everyone to be in a circle. It's so easy. I mean, stumbling out of church, that's easy because it's just an attendance thing. It's a habit thing. It's you wake up one Sunday and you're just tired and you don't want to go. It's that, hey, let's do something else this Sunday. Hey, let's go to the mountains. Hey, let's go to the beach. Hey, our kid got on a travel team. Let's don't go as much as we do. It's easy to stumble out of a church because church is just a habit thing. It's easy to stumble out of belief because an idea comes along that you hadn't thought about the right way and you have a bad experience or something hits you the wrong way. There are just too many distractions. It is easy to stumble out of faith that you have. It's easy to stumble out of your personal relationship with God because you just don't pray as much as you used to. You don't read the Bible as much as you used to. You don't invest as much in your time with God, and before you know it, your personal relationship with God just doesn't matter as much. But it is almost impossible to stumble out of community. It's almost impossible for a group of people to stumble out of a group of people to whom you are relationally connected, that you're doing life together, where you are in each other's face in a good way, where you're praying for each other and loving each other, where you're eating together and you're helping each other and you're encouraging each other. It is next to impossible to stumble out of that because it's relational and it connects you with them and it's tangible and people are paying attention to what's going on in your life. It's kind of like being in a family, except for this one thing. When you stumble, when something gets you off track morally or something gets you off track relationally and you stumble in a certain way, who are the last people in the world that you want to have talk to you about it? It's your family. It's your parents. It's your spouse. And some of you spouses know this because you've watched your husband stumble. There's this person, and you're afraid at work that the reason he hangs out longer at work is because of her, and you watched him get distracted, and he doesn't come home as quick as he used to, and now he wants to play golf on the weekends instead of go to church with you and the kids, and you tried to talk to him about it, but he doesn't want to hear it from you. That's because when stumbling blocks get in our way and they cause us to move away from the values that our family had, when there's a stage in life where we stumble, most of us don't listen to our parents. We don't listen to our family. We don't listen to our spouses. And that's why it's so important for us to have a regular, predictable, structured community around us, that loves God, because it is almost impossible to stumble out of that kind of community. And when we stumble, which is impossible for it not to happen, we all tend to not want to listen to our families. Now, one of the wisest men who ever lived was a guy named Solomon. And Solomon wrote the solution to this problem. And you may have heard this verse before. It comes from a book called Ecclesiastes, which is in the Old Testament. It just gives a list of wisdom that Solomon learned throughout his life. Here's what Solomon wrote about this particular thing. He said, "Two are better than one, because they have a good return for their labor." Now, you've seen that. I mean, two people working together can often do more than the work of two people. They can often do the work of three people or more, because there's a synergy when they work together and they systematize how they're going to do it. Then Solomon adds this: "Two are better than one, because they have a good return for their labor. If one of them falls down or stumbles, in our terms, one can help the other up." Now, that doesn't even need explanation, right? I mean, you know that. You understand. You stumble, somebody's there, they'll help you up. And then he gives a kicker to this. And what he says here is, this is our world. This is your world. This is my world. This is your teenager's world. This is your middle schooler's world. This is your kid's world. This is I'm married, single after being married, I moved to a new town. I'm all alone in this new place world. "But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up." Now, I'll just tell you, in my world, the church world, by far the hardest calls that we have to answer for anybody on our staff, the hardest calls that come into our office are the calls that somebody, and when you pick it up, they say, "Hey, my 16-year-old is off track, and I need you to talk to her. Hey, my son is involved with some people, and I need your help in getting him on track because he won't listen to me. Hey, my husband he's struggling. Could I get him to come in and talk to you? Hey, my wife, she's had this problem. Now she's taking too many pills, and I've tried to talk to her about it, but she won't listen to me. Could we come in, and can you help us?" Now, when those calls come in, when people call in and they want our help as a church, I'll just tell you, people on our staff, we do everything we can. When somebody calls and says, "Hey, somebody in my life has stumbled a little bit and they've fallen, will you help me help them stand back up?" Well, you need to know that one of the first questions we always ask is, "Hey, are you in a group?" And the reason we ask this is because after having done this for decades and decades and decades and decades, we know from experience, what many of you know from experience, is that when we hear a story of a couple, and you know, what we hear when people are getting baptized, and we hear this again and again, is people will tell about, "Hey, I was in a little bit of trouble and I got off track, but my group rallied around me and they helped me get back on track and my faith grew, and that's the reason I'm here today, and that's why I'm accepting Christ." We heard about people that will say, "I was in the worst time of my life and things were going so bad and I didn't want to listen to my mama and I didn't want to listen to my daddy and I didn't want to listen to my wife. But there were a group of people that I had been in relationship with, and when I stumbled, they got back on track. They got me back on track." So we always ask when they call in, "Are you in a group?" And almost every time the answer is no. And the reason the answer is almost always no, because if they were in a group, they wouldn't be calling us. They would already talk to their group, and maybe somebody in their group would have asked us for some auxiliary help, but their group would already be helping them. But you know what we hear again and again and again and again and again? People will write me, or it'll happen today. Somebody will come up and they'll talk to me after the service today, and they'll say, "I went through a really hard time. I mean, a soul-crushing hard time, and my group came around me." I got letters where people will say, "My son went through this thing, and His small group leader from when he was in middle school came up next to him, or the guy that he works with on the tech team, they came next to him, and he spoke truth to him. And when he didn't listen to me, he listened to them. My daughter lost her mind for a short amount of time, but her small group leader was just amazing. This is why we build this into our system, and why, if I could just push a button and make it happen, I'd put every one of you and all of your kids in a group. Solomon, the wisest man who ever wrote, said, 2 are much better than 1. They have a good return for their labor. The most wealthy, the most powerful, the smartest man on earth, who himself stumbled many, many times in this life, he said, pity the person who stumbles and has no one to help them back up. And you know what the tragedy is here? Is that people just keep this thing that we all need, they keep it at an arm's length. I mean, it doesn't matter how many times we talk about this. And some of you, it's happening to right now, where you're listening to that and you go, I can see where that's a good thing, but I don't need that. I don't have time for that. I have a busy schedule. My kids have too much going on in their activities, and my family and I are so close, or I have friends already, and I don't need another one. And then it happens. And they stumble, and they fall, which is no shame because it happens to every single one of us. Jesus said it would happen. And they have no one who has enough relational connection with them and with God they are willing to listen to, because again, when you stumble, you do not want to listen to your family. I mean, when people stumble morally, when people stumble and they need to be helped back up, when people stumble out of their family because they get distracted, do they even want to be helped back up? Lots of times, no, I'm fine. I don't need your help. I'm okay. I got this figured out. Because when people stumble, and when they need it most often, when they need somebody to come alongside of them, that's when they want it the least. When you stumble and you got distracted by having too much, or you got your faith dinged by somebody that hurt your feelings, and the last thing you want is for somebody to stop and to say, hey, can I help you back up? If you haven't done the hard work of laying the groundwork for it at that point where you've paid into people and you've been a part of a group at that point, if you aren't connected to some people who love you and love God already at that point, and I've been in these situations with some people where you just will not go away because you're connected to them. And you say, I'm just going to keep calling. I'm going to be that nagging voice in your head that says, hey, come on back. Oh, come on. I'll help you get back up. We aren't going to let you lay where you have fallen. Pity the person who falls down, and they have nobody to help them get back up. Because when you need somebody to help you back up, when you have kept this at arm's length and you don't think you need it, when you need it the most, you won't want it. When you ought to have it the most, you won't initiate it. That's why I would want you in a group right now. Because the best preparation you can make for what is inevitable in this life that you know and I know and we've already stumbled and we wish we'd had somebody then, the best preparation for what Jesus says was impossible is that you get a group. Because, see, you can stumble your way out of church attendance and you can stumble your way out of your faith habits, but it is almost impossible for you to stumble your way out of community. I mean, you practically have to decide, hey, I'm not going to take their phone call, and I'm going to get a new number, and I'm going to get another address, and I'm not going to tell them where they're moved. You practically have to intentionally decide, I'm just going to go away so they can't get in touch with me. Parents, can I plead with you for a few minutes? And I'll just say to you, I have nothing personally to gain from this other than I'm a dad who has 3 grown sons now who have watched them and watched their friends go through what some of you are currently going through or about to go through with your kids. Can I just plead with you as strong as I know to? And what I'm about to say is so strong, and I just need to make clear to you, this is not the Bible. This is just Ed saying this. You are missing out on you are crazy. And you don't want to use stronger words, but it's being recorded. You are crazy if you don't make the investment to give the time so that your kid can sit in a small group every week. I mean, your elementary kids need to be in a small group, and your middle schoolers need to be in a small group, and your 9th and 10th graders need to be in a small group. Because here's the truth. When your 11th and 12th graders get keys in their hands and they can drive, if you haven't paid the price to make sure they are sitting in a small group, they won't want to be in a small group. And in that moment, when you need some help from somebody that will reinforce your values, you won't have it because you didn't pay the price to get them here. We need it to happen so that when something happens and they stumble when they're in high school, and what junior and senior doesn't stumble? Look at the stuff that gets thrown at them. You stumbled, I stumbled, they all stumble. And when they stumble at that age, they're going to listen to you. And you know that because you didn't listen to your parents. And your friends didn't listen to their parents. So if they don't listen to you, who are they going to listen to? The 17-year-old that they're in love with that thinks just like they think? Who? Pity the high school junior or senior who stumbles and has no one who can help them stand back up. I just say, this isn't an extracurricular thing that I'm asking you to do. And I know this is going to upset some of you. Write me the emails. I can take it. I love you enough to say this. This isn't the same thing as you getting them on a baseball team that travels, or getting them on a soccer team, or getting them in cheerleading, or getting them in gymnastics, and putting them in an environment with good people. I'm not saying those people aren't good. I'm talking about being in an environment where people intentionally love them and love God and are building in them. Because here's the thing. All of us know that the day is coming when they won't cheerlead anymore, and they won't play soccer anymore, and they won't play baseball. All of those things are ending. But there are things that can happen to them while they're in middle and high school. There are ways that they can stumble that will affect them the rest of their life, and you know it. Because you stumbled, and it affected you for a long time. That's why we plead with you to decide you will pay the price to come to the same service every week. Because your kids need to be in the same small group with the same people, building relationships that are deep enough so that when they stumble, somebody's relationally connected enough to say the things to them that you would say if they would listen to you. Because when they stumble, they aren't going to listen to you because you didn't listen to your parents at that time, and neither did anybody else you know. Now, if that doesn't convince you for them, think about this. Remember when you were a kid and your mom and dad got a little crosswise? What if your dad had been in a group of men back then who, when he started to stumble, there were a group of men that came around him and said, hey, whoa, we're not going to let you stumble your way out of this family. We're not going to let you drink your way out of this family. We're not going to let you drug your way out of this family. We're not going to let you distract your way. We're not going to let you affair your way out of this family. You matter too much to this family, and you matter too much to us. I know you've stumbled. We're going to help you stand back up. Imagine if when their marriage got a little crosswise, your parents had been in a group of couples that when those couples saw them stumble, they said, hey, wait a second. We'll see to it that your counseling gets paid for, and we'll babysit your kids. We'll drive you to counseling if we have to, but we will not let you stumble out of this marriage. It matters too much to you, and it matters too much to us. We're here to help you stand back up. Here's what I'm asking you to think about. How much difference would that have made in your life when you were in high school, middle school, elementary school, if somebody had been there to help your parents then? For the sake of your kids, for the sake of your family, for your own sake, you need to be in a circle of people who know you and know God. What if you'd have had that back when you were in the 10th grade, when you stumbled? If there had been an adult who you already trusted, who had already invested in you, who could say the things to you that you would have listened to them. This is why we want you to be in a group. It's why we believe circles are way better than rows, because when you stumble, you aren't going to come sit in these rows unless somebody who loves you grabs you by the elbow and says, hey, come on. We're going to get you back on track. You won't do it on your own. So can I direct your attention right now to the connection card? If you got it involved a little bit late, this is probably on your chair, and there's probably a pen nearby. I just ask you to go ahead and fill this out. It's an individual card, not a family card. We ask everybody to fill this out because we believe you came here with a purpose to hear something, see something, and God wants you to take a next step in your relationship with Him. On the back of this is a section called Next Steps. And every week we ask you to check one of these because, again, God's calling us to move forward in our relationship with Him. So today, there are a lot of things listed there. I really, if I've made any dent and I've helped you see a little bit that you need what I've been talking about, would you decide between one or two options that are on there for next steps? Would you, maybe if I've totally convinced you, would you just check that box that says, I commit, I'm going to get in a connection group. I'm going to do it. You commit to that. Or maybe I've dented you a little bit, but I haven't firmly convinced you, and you just like an opportunity to just try it out. At every campus in 2 weeks, on the 17th, we're going to have what we call test drive, which is an opportunity for you to just literally be in a small group experience for that one day. It'll happen right after the service at your campus. You check that box, and we'll get you in a test drive. It's really painless. You could be a part of that and test it all out. It could be your next step in doing what God's asking you to do. We believe you're here on purpose, and you heard this for a purpose. Will you decide, I'm not going to be that person that stumbled and other people look at and say, I feel so sorry for them, they don't have anybody help them back up. Because stumbling blocks, they're inevitable. They're going to happen. But pity the person who stumbles and has nobody to help them up. Now, as you finish filling this out, we're going to end our service a little bit different today, and I need to give you instructions about that. But while I'm giving these instructions, if at our campuses right now, if you're going to receive the offering, if you just go ahead and begin to come and receive the offering, you're not interrupting me. I'm going to keep talking and explain what we're going to do at the end of the service. But let's receive the offering and our next steps right now while I'm talking. So go ahead and fold that paper and put it in the offering as it comes by. Now, here's what we're going to do to end the service today. And we don't do this all the time. In fact, we've never done this before. So if you're visiting with us, this doesn't happen all the time. You can be assured of that. I want so badly for you to have the opportunity to connect and to have an opportunity and to take a shot at connecting. And we know that people come sometimes week after week after week and sit in rows and they never have a chance to talk to anybody. People don't connect with them. That I want to give a chance before we're done today for you to actually have the opportunity to do this. And it isn't going to take very long. It's going to hopefully be fairly painless. But in just a moment, some questions are going to come up on the screen, and I'm asking you to just turn to the people that are immediately around you, in front of you, beside you, behind you, all those kind of things, and just talk to them about the questions that are on the screen. And there's going to be a timer on the screen with it so that you can look at and you can see it's just about over. But would you take just a moment, take a chance, and answer these questions? So right now, everybody take a deep breath, take a risk. Maybe this will be your first step toward connection.